only 2 spots left in the quarterfinals, setting the stakes for the teams hitting the Rift today. Reckless and EU's #1 seed Fnatic return to the Rift opposite North America's 100 Thieves as Aframu and his squad try to shake up the standings to kick off the day. The NA-EU bout at the title card, and of course that big one coming in the 6th game of the day, Fnatic versus IG. I'm James Ash Patterson here with Indiana Frosker and Black, Martin DeFiscio Lunga, and Joshua Jatt Leisman. The final day, the last 2 teams going to the knockout stage. How are you guys feeling ahead of these 6 games?
I'm actually feeling great, but I'm also a little bit nervous. Not about the first game against 100 Thieves for Fnatic, but more about the last game. I think getting 2nd seed for Fnatic would be a bit of a disappointment, looking at RNG, KT, and so on as the other first seeds there.
And thank goodness for C9, by the way, because I don't have many hopes for 100 Thieves coming into the day, but the pressure's off now. They're not the last hope for North America group stage, because C9 took care of that on the first day of the 2nd round robin.
Meanwhile, anxiety will just build here for DeFiscio throughout the day.
Especially if they look shaky in some of the first games, I'm going to be really nervous for the last one.
Well, 30 minutes till we find out. Yesterday, we saw the teams in Group C battle out with the LCK champions KT Rolster and Edward Gaming advancing to the quarterfinals. Now, despite the LPL representative getting revenge against KT Rolster, EDG exited the day as the group's 2nd seed after falling short to Team Liquid.
And it was really typical Edward Gaming fashion. The fact that you can have such volatility on this roster, their lack of consistency, the individual pieces are so good when you look at someone like iBoy and Scout, but they just don't have the macro or strategy that are consistent enough to continue to take top teams down.
They had the team fighting, however, against KT. Disappointing for us. We would all predicted KT to go 6-0 in that group. We thought it was a guarantee they were going to take all the games.
We still had the order correct, and KT still moves out as the first place team. In fact, 5-1 is the best record a team has had in the group stage. So despite that slip against EDG, KT still dominated TL twice in the group stage, dominated MAD twice in the group stage, and I think are still looking strong moving forward.
I do think that there are some weaknesses to pick at KT, though. Now that, their draft was super prideful, you know, giving away the likes of the Urgot and the Kai'Sa both to Edward Gaming, so a bit of a fumble there. They probably won't make that same mistake, but also the late game team fighting. You know, we saw that KT had picked it up in summer. They were able to come back from massive deficits, but maybe some of their spring misgivings still there in the team, that if you take them to those late game, you have a better chance to beat them.
Now, of course, this means we also had to say goodbye to Team Liquid and MAD Team, with the NALCS first seed falling just short after beating EDG.
Yeah, very disappointing end for Team Liquid, especially when they were watching their hopes fall away as EDG beat KT right before TL was going to play EDG for a potential tiebreaker. It's yet another year they don't make it out of group stage, so bittersweet because they were able to win that game against EDG, but ultimately it was their final game at Worlds.
And then, unfortunately, massive disappointment for MAD Team as well on the other side. You know, after Flash Wolves fell down, after a really great start, the other LMS squad then comes and goes 0-6, the first time a major region has ever done that. So just disappointment across the board.
And without a doubt, now with 6 teams already qualified for the knockout stage, we challenged ourselves to power rank them in an attempt to gauge relative strength. So all 4 of us submitted a ballot. We then took those numbers, averaged them out to give us these power rankings. KT Rolster, Royal Never Give Up, sharing first place, which means we split the ballot 2-2 on who would be first and who would be second.
And all I want to say is, LCK fans, do not blame me for Edward Gaming sneaking in over Afrika. That was not...
Where did you put Afrika?
Wasn't me either. I put a...
What rank did you put Afrika?
I didn't put Edward Gaming that high.
Where did
I put them 5th.
You had Afrika at number 5?
Yeah.
You had Afrika lower than anyone else. What are you talking about?
She had C9 3rd.
I put C9 there. I didn't put EDG there, though.
Did you put
that's all you.
Did you put EDG below Afrika?
No question.
I know exactly what you're thinking. You can't make that
So all
statement.
3 of you put EDG above Afrika.
Yes.
Yeah, let's work our way through this one at a time. The top 2 seeds, KT, RNG. We came to no consensus about whether or not one of these teams is favored over the other based on the numbers.
So I put RNG first.
I also
still.
put RNG.
A lot of it actually just comes down to late game team fighting. I still think a lot of the games in playoff stage will go to that point. I think RNG against KT, that is a way to beat them. It is not to try and run them over in the early game. I think with Uzi and RNG also showing a lot of different picks now they can actually use, they will, in a best of 5, win game 5 against KT.
And I agree with you. On the other side, though, for KT, I can understand why a lot of people are getting behind them. I think they looked much cleaner in their group stage performance, getting out 5-1. And likewise, Let Me really fell down when RNG decided to have that horrific, second part of group stage, whereas Smeb still looks pretty untouchable. So in terms of 1v1 matchup, I do actually slight that more towards KT, even though I also had RNG come out first.
Yeah, I've been hyping up KT since the start of the tournament. They did slip up against EDG, but as we mentioned, I think a lot of that was in the draft issue. It could have just been seeing what they would be able to do against Urgot Akali, because you're going to want to be able to put yourself in that draft situation during a best of 5. And they technically had a game to play with because they knew they could still get first.
Where I think things get more interesting is when we move beyond those 1-2 seeds, right? The idea that I know Jat and I both had EDG sitting in the third rank. For you guys, though, where did the EDG fall?
I had EDG number 4, I had Afrika number 3.
So originally I had it like that. The only reason I swapped Edward Gaming ahead of Afrika at the very end is because I thought about Tucson and Kramer, and I personally think this meta is much more dependent on a strong bottom lane with how much priority's down there. I'm like, iBoy and Mako are really popping off. I don't know if I can give it to Afrika in a best of 5.
Yeah, and a lot of the ways that Afrika was able to stabilize at the end of their group stage was by playing long, slow, controlled games. And I feel like EDG might have the ability to break that with their ceiling, because they can be such aggressive players and because they can team fight so well. I think it's going to be extremely close, and I'm actually hoping we see an EDG Afrika best of 5.
And the thing is that's what everyone wanted at Rift Rivals, because when Afrika went up against EDG, the first time Edward Gaming absolutely smashed them. Scout had probably the best game that he's ever had in his career. The second time around, though, Afrika got their revenge. They were much clever in the draft, and that's the big counterpoint for me, is that also Edward Gaming tend to fumble their drafts like a lot of LPL teams do.
Exactly.
And Afrika are very well known for that. So in a best of 5, I'm now almost like regretting. I was like, I shouldn't have made that edit. I actually should just back Afrika.
That's why for me, I locked in the first 3 really quickly, and then I was debating more between like C9 and G2 and the teams down at the bottom. But Afrika already showed in the last day when they won every single game that they have completely fixed their draft issues. They understand the meta now. They're going to a best of 5 with a couple of days to work on that as well. They will for sure get the advantage early on.
Yeah, the fact that Afrika is sitting in 4th, I'm wondering if we're undervaluing.
I think you guys are.
Yeah, the second round robin performance of that squad. I think that the counter to that is the assumed strength of the group, right? Which is if I view Group A as the weakest group to have played so far, even though they topped the group, doesn't necessarily make it more impressive than, say, a Cloud9 who showed up against RNG and made it a battle.
Yeah, and that was the huge thing for me in ranking Cloud9 so high. I believe I had Cloud9 higher than anyone else on our collective rankings.
Correct.
And it was because of relative strength of the group. The fact that Cloud9 were performing so well against Vitality and RNG, and the fact that they did it across the board as a single unit. Now, in a best of 5, I don't know if that's going to hold up, and I don't know if we're going to see that same performance out of players like Zeyzal and Jinsen, who maybe under spotlights tend to take a step back or maybe don't have the experience to step forward. But last results that I saw from Cloud9, I actually think they're super hyped going into a best of 5.
Of course, we got 2 more teams joining this list, and so I'm sure it'd be fun to have that same conversation at the end of the day around where they slot in. Today, the teams in Group D will battle for the last 2 remaining quarterfinal spots, with the LPL's Invictus Gaming currently undefeated ahead of EU LCS champions Fnatic, followed by 100 Thieves at 1-2, and G-Rex, who are still hunting for that first win. 100 Thieves will get a chance to tie the score in our first game, however, as they face off against the first seed from EU, followed by IG versus G-Rex. After our last game, you can catch the knockout stage draw during World's Cooldown, where we'll be breaking down the matchups as we get them. Spotlight on the matchups here today.
First game and the 6th game. Those are the ones that are most likely to be able to decide this group, because if Fnatic does take care of business against 100 Thieves and then IG beats G-Rex, we know which teams are going through. Then it's essentially 3 trap games in a row to see if that final game can be for the first seed.
Of course, as you mentioned, that's with Fnatic getting it done in game 1, right? So there will be a lot of anticipation leading up to the first game and how that one shakes out.
There's a lot of pressure on Fnatic in this situation here, especially after all the things they've said in interviews regarding them, rating them as a really top team at Worlds. You must be able to deal with 100 Thieves and G-Rex very easily without also showing too much before that IG game.
I don't know. I understand like the idea of the pressure on the Fnatic, and I'm not trying to dispute that, but it's always this idea that, you know, pressure's on Fnatic, Western Hope, the other Western teams are showing up. The same pressure is there for Invictus Gaming. You know, they completely collapsed the last time they were at Worlds, and Rookie himself says, you know, it's on us. We have to perform now.
All right, well, after the break, Deficio and Jat will duel it out in some drafts for 100 Thieves versus Fnatic. And before we share our predictions on how the final day of groups will play out, we'll see you on the other side.
I think our group has been pretty much predictable. I think Invictus and us are the main competitors to get out of the group stage.
Brox are trying to run him down. Sonic Wave. If the brings it home!
Are IG and Fnatic monster favorites in this group?
Oh my God, Jackie Love!
Absolutely. But sometimes one game is all it takes to turn the tide.
I think just for us, definitely got to focus on playing more confidently, making sure, you know, we're not playing too scared.
Aphromoo hit hook after hook after hook in that fight. A thing of beauty there from the NA superstar.
Coming to this group stage, facing all the traditional strong team, it's gonna be harsh for us. If you lost the first game, you cannot collapse. We gotta still going forward.
파리에서 2015년 때인데 그때 저희가 성적이 너무 안 좋아가지고 제 개인적으로나 아니면 팀적으로나 약간 기분이 좀 안 좋았어요. 근데 이번에 다시 기회를 잡고 롤드컵에 다시 왔는데 저희가 더 열심히 해서 좋은 성적으로 팬들에게 보답하고 싶어요.
Sometimes one game is all it takes to turn the tides, and that's exactly what can happen in our first game of the day. Welcome back to World's Countdown, where we're about 15 minutes away from kicking things off. And in relation to that first game, Fnatic versus 100 Thieves, Deficio and Jat will have a go at picks and bans, with Deficio drafting for the EU champions and Jat for the second seed from NA. Let's check it out.
Thank you very much, Dash. And we did this a few times on NALCS Countdown. This is the first time Deficio's been able to join us. We have pre-populated our bans. We did this before the show. Do you want to just talk quickly about what your ban strategy was?
Yeah, so I have two things I'm looking at in this ban phase. One, I want to get rid of playmakers from Aphromoo. I don't want him to be able to carry Ricard down in the bottom lane, so Thresh was my first ban.
Yep.
And obviously when I saw your Pyke ban, I knew, okay, there's going to be a lot of support bans.
Yeah, there's been a pinch on support bans. Zakali was banned because I don't like that matchup. For me, Caps is the hardest thing to draft against, but let's get into it. What is your first pick? I think I already know.
My first pick is going to be my good friend,
Urgot.
Urgot up in the top lane, coming in instantly. It's really simple. I need Source to have a lane where he will not, by any means, get shut down against Someday, because I think Someday is the carry.
This was expected for me. And I'm not sure if you know about this, but Shen is actually 3-0 against Urgot in group stage.
He's lost every lane.
Which is, okay, I actually disagree. I think the Licorice lane was fine, and a lot of the NA top laners may have been similar to each other in their read of this, so it's an expected loss that I have to do. And then the other thing, with the support pinch that we have already, I am actually going to be drafting Braum.
Early Braum coming in.
Early Braum pick.
All right.
Got?
So on my side, this actually means that I can get my preferred AD carry, which I'm very happy to see.
I take a Xayah. Okay.
I wasn't sure I was going to get Xayah with this one.
That's possible.
Perfectly down the bottom lane. Now, I do have a little bit of an issue if I'm Fnatic now when it comes to support champ pool, because obviously there's been a lot of supports already. Of the remaining melee supports to play, actually the best one available for me, and that I feel like I have to take now so it doesn't get banned away next one, is actually going to be things like a Tahm Kench or a Taric. Those two are the two options. I like the Tahm Kench personally in this case here, and I'm going to grab him in the bot lane.
Yeah, that's expected. I would have done a full support pinch in the next ban phase if Deficio wouldn't have taken it right there, so I think it's the right choice. I'm also happy with that because it takes away some of the aggression that you'd be able to throw in.
That's where I like the Tahm Kench ulti, though, for later.
Well, we'll see about that. As far as this, looking at the matching roles, you have AD carry support. I don't want to get pinched too hard on AD carries, so at this point, Xayah there, I am actually going to say you're not going to be able to win that hard, and I'm going to go with Kai'Sa.
So far from me, I'm actually happy with what I see. First of all, Someday is on a tank top lane, which means he cannot be the carry for 100 Thieves, which I think is necessary for them to beat Fnatic. So that was one of my goals with first picking Urgot. Second of all, I think it is a fairly weak bot lane they're drafting for a laner who's already falling really far behind. So I'm actually very happy that I feel like I'm sitting in a good spot top, and I have a pushing lane bot lane for Reckless, which is his preferred style. Now, your first ban.
Yeah, second phase of bans. You got a few solo kills, and I don't really want the skill matchup, so Aurelia is bye.
I will actually say I was thinking about picking Aurelia here if it wasn't for all the pinches on support, because I really wanted Aurelia and I didn't think you had an answer to it, but also had this situation where I needed something, and I actually think Fnatic, if this happened, could just wait with support and pick like Morgana or something later.
And this is what I talk about acceptable losses. That's why I needed to opt into that, because it was very difficult to prevent you from taking Aurelia. Anyway, go for your bans.
Now, for me, one ban I do want to get rid of, because I think it is one of the ways good teams can still lose, is things like a Nocturne. I'm going to take that away from 100 Thieves.
Fair enough.
Also with the Shen up in top.
Yeah, I think that is very interesting, as well as the priority that you guys have shown on Olaf for Fnatic. I'm going to ban that here. There's a lot of things that you'd want to target. Jungle is an interesting one to target with Caps having so many champions, but you're going to see what my strategy is eventually for this, and this is my plan. I don't want to give too much away.
So my last jungle ban is the one jungler Ander has played the most, which I also think would be the best choice for him to grab right now. Also with the Olaf ban, if I had left Nocturne open, I would have picked Olaf into it, but I wasn't sure if it actually was going to survive the ban phase, so I didn't want to risk it, and I didn't want Shen Nocturne to be a thing.
You, my friend, have left a pretty good jungler up that can be quality for late game team fights. I'm taking Skarner.
You're taking Skarner.
I'm saving my last pick for a counter.
All right, so for myself, down in the mid lane, I'm thinking there's actually a lot of choices right now.
There's a lot of choices. It's impossible to ban Caps out, so I've opted for this strategy.
I can go Syndra, which is the safest blind pick right now, but she lacks mobility, which is the one issue. I can go LeBlanc, which I think is the one he makes the most plays on.
Okay.
But obviously there is a few answers to it. Not answers that will completely shut it down. Because of the Skarner, it does make it a little bit annoying. LeBlanc can get grabbed by him very easily. I think I'm just going to take the safe lane bully for myself because I have Tahm Kench for late game. So I'm not concerned about Syndra getting caught out too much in team fights, no matter what you grab, and you probably expect.
This is what I wanted. What's your jungler?
Down the jungle, though, I do have a large notebook here.
There's lots of talking for Deficio. Remember, he's on the clock, 30 seconds ticking down.
I am just going to go with the safest last choice I can get for the best Lee Sin player in Europe.
You can also get grabbed a lot by Skarner.
I'm okay with that. I got the big boy Tahm Kench.
Yeah. Did you know that Ryu's best champion in solo queue, as well as in my opinion professional play, is the LeBlanc?
I know, and that's a skill matchup that I want for Caps.
It's hard to find something safer. If you're going to take LeBlanc, I was going to take the Lissandra. So what's interesting about these is we've talked through a lot of possibilities. We don't have scrim results. A lot of times during draft, the coaches are asking players, what would you like in this matchup? We had to make all these decisions. My strategy going into the draft was to actually get good team fighting and limit the amount of engage that Fnatic can have. And I actually think I did a pretty good job with that. The only thing I have to do is make it through the early laning phase.
I think for me, I wanted someday on a tank, so the main carry of the team is effectively gone. I wanted Reckless and Hylissang to have a pushing bot lane, which is why I also took the Tahm Kench early. In this case, I could have waited with support and grabbed the range support we haven't maybe seen so far and taken Irelia, which could have made it even harder for you guys. But I think in the end, I get really strong lanes across the board, and I get one of the best jungle picks for Broxah.
All right, let's head back to the desk.
Get back over here.
What do you think?
All right, Frost, what are your thoughts on this?
Do you want me to just go in?
My biggest concern is that 100 Thieves bot lane.
I mean,
my biggest concern is all of 100
I
Thieves
agree.
lanes.
Like, I agree that that's always a concern for 100 Thieves. I think that LeBlanc is something that has pressure onto the Syndra, and Tahm Kench isn't necessarily the kill lane up against the Kaiser Braum, and hope they can withstand.
The problem that I have, Jat, is that you sacked pretty much all of your lanes, and then you sacked a skill matchup into Caps, one of the best performing mid laners at the tournament.
But I ask you this for 100 Thieves. What is their win condition against Fnatic?
Not to die before 15 minutes.
Or at 20. Like, what is your strategy to win against 100 Thieves? I think it's an unlikely win.
Yeah.
So in the case that they get through to the mid or late game, that's where they can actually succeed.
I do like the Skarner LeBlanc at level 6 against Syndra. I think you can actually try and go for Flash Hook against her.
If it's a 1-2, but level 6, if you're talking about straight power, yeah, you can have kill potential on Syndra, but you're looking at a Lee Sin at level 6 who gets the kick. So an ultimate that does damage, and then Syndra level 6 with a massive damage. So it's 2v2 level 6, that's still heavily won by Fnatic.
But that's the thing, you know, that's perfect scenario where Broxah is there in the right moment. Predator, Chilling Smite, Flash Skarner, eventually will find his way then. I can see them get a kill with this setup. Ideally, though, Caps will actually understand that and wait for Broxer to be around before he pushes
Either way,
up.
it's fun to go through the possibilities because, in my opinion, 100 Thieves doesn't have that many options. So
Right.
they have to take, in my opinion, acceptable risks in order to get a win condition.
Okay.
I actually think one of the nice things about Jat's draft is its ability to play a 1-3-1 because you do have
very 1-3-1
Shin
draft.
and LeBlanc. So if the team fights do start falling apart, the only caveat then is that you're taking the risk and the gamble and the fact that you left the Urgot open. So if a breaking point is that no one can deal with Urgot, so if no one can kill Soaz in that side lane, then all of that collapses. And I feel like it's almost like, can Ryu play a side lane versus can Soaz play a side lane with this draft?
But that's also why I banned Nocturne. I was like, I see Shen already. I don't want to give you Shen Nocturne plus maybe a last pick mid. Like, that's too insane.
I would have gone with that.
Because otherwise I could have banned LeBlanc, but then he would have picked a Syndra, and I didn't really feel like I had a good answer then.
But even if you survive past the 15-minute mark, which if we're going to say like early game, categorically, I think Deficio and Fnatic's draft absolutely just blasts 100 Thieves here. If they survive, then you're basically just banking on Rakara on the Kaisa, and his best champion, like this is the one area. When you did Shin Braum, I was like, why won't you take the Xayah here? Rakara literally had 907 DPM for that one Xayah game versus the Kaisa and the Varus. He did 650 less on the Kaisa, and he did even less on the Varus. It's by far and above his best champion that he's shown at Worlds, and I think that's where things really went sideways, by prioritizing a playmaking champion for Afro versus getting Rakara on a comfort pick.
Yeah, we could continue this discussion. Definitely need to move on.
I was going to say, we can do this indefinitely.
I was ready for this.
Why I draft what I drafted.
Well, we'll see what happens when these teams clash on the Rift as Fnatic look to secure a win and challenge Invictus Gaming for the first seed in this group.
Yeah.
Shifting gears to IG.
Yeah, I mean, if there is going to be an upset today, I think it would either be in the first game or in the sixth game. It's just a matter of in between what we have. So much of this, as far as Fnatic goes, was domination in the first game. They completely ended the game with the mid lane. Aurelia solo killing the Syndra multiple times, even dives bottom that were completely wrong for 100 Thieves. Like, Fnatic completely controlled the pace.
But the thing I always hear about 100 Thieves, especially from you guys, is they find ways, even when behind, to like kind of scrap through. They get a 1 or 2 picks before Drake or something. They buy a bit of time. They get to late game, and that's where they can try and do something. And I think that's the thing for Fnatic here is there's 2 ways they can attack this. Either they say, we know we can beat them in the early game, so we draft super strong early game and we just run over them like we did last time. Or they say, we know the only way 100 Thieves can win is in the late game. So you start putting a few picks in there that are late game insurance. Xayah, Sivir, these kind of 80 carries or Reckless can actually win the late game for you. Could be things that they will actually prioritize to make sure that even if something goes wrong early, they don't just hard lose late game.
I almost think the same win condition for both teams is simply on the top side of the map. Someday gets a skill-based matchup where he can actually try to take over a game, be that really intimidating Urgot that we saw so much success earlier on, or it's a tank versus tank matchup and Fnatic win anyway because they neutralize him.
Yeah, and I know Fnatic has a lot of trust in Source. I actually think Source right now can match Someday in almost anything. It's just the fact that Someday could get a counter pick that could be difficult, but Source is not necessary for Fnatic to win, and that's the key thing. He doesn't need to win lane. I think Someday needs to do that for this team. So Source is the safe option here. Whippo is the aggressive, I'm going to run at your face 24/7, and he might get ganked because of it. Source should play a lot safer, and that's also why they run him here. They trust he will take whatever matchup and do well.
The 2 matchups we keep talking about are the first and the last, and it's going to be important for Fnatic to not be focused on that 6th game of the day because they're required essentially to pick up these wins here to make that one a challenge for the first seed, assuming things go to chalk. Now, their opponents, 100 Thieves, they're looking for revenge after getting crushed the first time around. And if they get this win here in the first game, then all of a sudden the rest of the games become all that much more interesting.
Exactly. It's an incredibly high-pressure game for 100 Thieves because they can be eliminated from groups essentially based on this result. But it's also a low-pressure game based on the expectations of the community. So they have the opportunity to prove people wrong. And I will say, throughout the NALCS year, there were multiple times, Dash, where Mark and I would sit here and talk about how 100 Thieves was done for, and then the next week they would pull out a 2-0 and surprise people. So you can hold out a small bit of hope that they have a chance of doing that again, but I think Fnatic obviously comes in as the big favorite.
Well, despite how unreliable, they can be, we're going to go ahead and take a look at our predictions for Group D. Who's going to advance? Do we all align?
No,
Almost.
we do not.
I mean, come on, guys.
Deficio's
winning the
calling
tiebreaker,
the
too.
Fnatic victory over Invictus in the final game of the day to force a tiebreak.
Listen, Fnatic, they have red side this time. They can last pick for caps. They don't need to sit in Swain versus Syndra, which was obviously not going to be a good thing for them, especially after he had to blow like early summoners. I think with the last pick, Fnatic gets this one. The tiebreaker, however, for me, depends on side selection so much before I can call who's actually winning it.
I mean, technically, Jet and I are predicting the spicier one because no team has gone undefeated yet at this tournament. And we're like, Invictus Gaming, today's the day, the 6-0.
We've called now 3 6-0s, right? We called RNG with the possibility.
We
We
keep
called
trying.
KT with the possibility.
See, I
We're
hope
saying
you're wrong today.
IG should.
While Fnatic is not allowed to look only at that final game, because dropping one game means they won't have the control of their own destiny, IG actually is allowed to do that. Because if they beat Fnatic, they can lose the other 2 games and still get first in the group. Because then both teams would be 4-2 and they'd have a 2-0 head. So they literally can hide their strategies the entire day before that Fnatic game.
Time to find out who our last teams for the quarterfinals will be as we head over to Quick Shot, Vedius, and Kobe.